The Rules Committee has handed over Commander to Wizards of the Coast. What does it mean, and what does Wizards of the Coast plan to do? We're going to talk about it. Welcome to the Attic ManaDad here. It's the channel where we explore what's fun in Magic, mostly on Arena, but all anybody wants to talk about right now is Commander. And even though I don't do a ton of Commander things on this channel, I mean, I try to make my Brawl decks Commander legal most of the time. I do play Commander, and I love Commander, and I have a lot of thoughts on what's going on. And so I made a video when all the stuff about the bans went down, and I was telling people, you know, don't sell your cards right away. Hold on. There might be other changes to the format or a new format. I swear, I had no inside information. This is a small YouTube channel. I don't have connections to any of the other people. I'm not on any Wizards lists or anything, despite trying to get to play in the pre-release stuff that they do. Nobody has ever responded to my emails on that. So maybe not being so tapped in has actually given me some perspective, or just maybe being in this game since near when it began has given me some perspective. I don't know. Or maybe I just guessed really lucky. You leave a comment and let me know what you think. But that is the situation we find ourselves in. So let's just read through the Wizards announcement, and also I have some tweets by the or some X's, so some statements by some RC Rules Committee members about what they are thinking, what they were thinking in this. But let's go through it. In case you don't know, September 30th, just yesterday as I record this, on the future of Commander. The past week has been tumultuous for Commander fans, members of the Commander Rules Committee, and the Magic community as a whole. Along the way, we've seen players and fans share a diverse range of passionate opinions, far too many of which were harmful or malicious. That's true. I really want to know, because I was getting the sense, yeah, there were like death threats and stuff going on, which is wrong. But also, anytime you get a community that's huge, there's going to be people with mental illness, essentially. I have a neighbor who's mentally ill. He gets fixated on stuff. It's not dangerous, at least not yet, but like he will make your life a misery if you know, talk about masking or anything that he's like gets on a hobby horse about. And so I understand this. Like, this is the law of large numbers. And this is what happened with Commander, is that essentially what started as a fan-created format like 15 years ago has grown into the biggest Magic constructed format. And that's, you know, the Rules Committee deserves a lot of thanks in shepherding that, and the sort of the founder of Commander, Sheldon Menery, who passed away last year, deserves a lot of gratefulness and thanks from the people who enjoy Commander for growing it and keeping it alive and making it so vital. But now it's gotten to this point where it seemed like to me, the casual observer or less than casual observer, that something was going to have to, they're going to have to be a split, whether it was CDH and a casual EDH or other things. We'll talk about that more. But when stuff gets too big to be managed, stuff happens. But then, I mean, we know there's this element in the community. There's this element in a lot of fan communities that's toxic. And this really just feels like, well, let's keep reading before I get into that. Below and over the next few days and weeks, we will be discussing quite a bit about Commander, starting with the most pressing. Over the past week, the conversation has escalated, culminating with unacceptable personal threats to the safety of members of the Commander Rules Committee. This is something we will not tolerate. You know, these were volunteers. They were not getting paid to be on the Rules Committee. And yeah. No matter how you feel about something in Magic, it is never appropriate to threaten somebody. Everyone at Wizards of the Coast is united on this front. We will not hesitate to take action against individuals who threaten to harm community members or employees. If you see this locally, like, and these people probably need like mental health interventions. I understand people getting mad, popping off their mouth, saying something they don't mean. That's still wrong. Shouldn't be doing that. And I advised in my last video, everybody take a deep breath. And I understand the anger when it's like somebody reached into your pocket and stole $100 or more out with these bans, but not. It's a game, and people, the rules committee was trying their best. They were coming from a place of love. They really thought that those bans were gonna improve the game. Um, and people who work at Wizards get this kind of stuff too, and don't do it. They make the game we all love. So if it's not a question of mental illness, if you're just really seriously considering this, don't do it. But I think that we're talking about. I have to hope that we're talking about a small population of people that is legitimately, genuinely has mental issues and they need some intervention. And if you know people like that, I mean, be a good friend, help them get help. All right. This week has also demonstrated the truly monumental task that faced the Commander Rules Committee. The Commander RC is made up of 5 talented, caring individuals, all with other jobs and lives which they must balance with managing the most popular format in Magic. It results in incredible amounts of work, time spent deliberating, and exposure to the public. I mean, so what does it take to make that not worth it? Would you do it? Nobody deserves to feel unsafe for supporting the game they love. Unfortunately, the task of managing Commander has far outgrown the scope and safety of being attached to any 5 people. So attach it to a faceless corporation. I mean, I have to think that Gavin Verhey at Wizards of the Coast, who's been, kind of one of the leaders in managing Pauper, is going to be one of the lead point people because he's also really involved in the Commander scene. And I'm sure Gavin gets a lot of hate and negative attention, and I hope he's ready for it. I hope Wizards people are ready, or maybe they keep it faceless to try and preserve people. I don't know. It's a hard thing. People feel this strongly about it, and I'd say rather, if you have really strong feelings, channel it into something else, and we'll talk about some alternatives you can channel it into, besides like, yoga or playing ultimate frisbee or, whatever your physical outlet is. So today, in partnership with members of the existing rules committee, and they got this bolded, we are announcing that the rules committee is giving management of the Commander format to the game design team of Wizards of the Coast. So there are other fan created formats of Magic, but none of them rise to the same level. I mean, Commander is more popular than Standard, Modern, Pioneer, Vintage, Legacy, Brawl, all the like Wizards managed formats that you've heard of and that hopefully you've tried to play. Draft, Limited, a big endorsement. Play more Limited. People are enjoying the current set right now. I'm sure Wizards didn't want this crisis, as some have called it, to be distracting from their current set, or maybe they did. Maybe it's an odd set. That would be a separate video if I ever do it. You can hear my thoughts about that on the draft and standard videos that I do from Valgavoth's lair here. Okay. Game design team's got it. Commander's always been a community-focused format. This move in management does not change that. It does change that. Let's be real. I think going forward, at least maybe for a year, 2 years, maybe for several years, it's going to feel very much like the Commander that we've all been playing. But now that it's in Wizards' hands, the incentive structure is very different. And their incentive is still to have a really popular game. Essentially, the Commander has taken over the design, the design team anyway. You see how many cards are printed in these sets that are clearly for Commander. And that's because most people play Commander. It's a terrible way to introduce people to this game, but it is, people want to play the thing their friends are already playing. And there's a lot of momentum behind Commander. And we'll see if that changes after this, but I'm sure they're going to be listening to the community, and there's going to be, the Magic community is not known for holding back feedback. And people who are high up there, like Mark Rosewater, Marrow, he has a blog. He does a lot of community interaction. Gavin Verhey does a lot of community interaction. I think they do listen to the community, and they're really designing, and they're getting ideas, and they're moving forward on things based on what they're hearing. The other part of that is, though, Hasbro gives them mandates. Like, they're clearly releasing more sets than the community wants. Like, that team is overworked, almost definitely, releasing so many sets. It's so hard to keep up with new cards. And they're doing a great job. They're designing new and interesting cards in all these sets, so you feel like you have to pay attention. But you hear content creators, and I'm a small-time content creator, and it does burn you out to try and follow all this stuff. Like, we're barely going to get to enjoy Duskmorn, and then it's just going to be on to the next. Okay. While ownership of the format may be changing, members of the Rules Committee and others in the community will continue to be involved. Okay, I believe that. And the vision for social format will not change. Again, Commander has already proven to be a really popular format, so Wizards changes it too much at their own peril. I mean, they still want to sell cards. They want people playing Magic. The question is, can they adjust the format in ways that sell a few more cards while still keeping it basically the same format? So I think they can, and they will. We've had some preliminary conversations already about what we would like to accomplish and have some ideas we will be rolling out together in the months to come. So they're going to get into that idea. And there's a Discord channel. I'm not going on there. I'm sure it's filled with toxic bilge. A weekly MTG stream. What's next? While this is still very early, we do want to share one of the things that we've just started working on in the Rules Committee, a more objective approach to deck power level and additional guidance and shared language for players to find games that match the type of game they're trying to play. This has been a real problem with Commander as it has grown in popularity. It's not just judges showing off their favorite janky cards, as they judge other things, and it's just a side format that some people play at conventions. It's become, there's a competitive version, there's people who want to do jank, there's people who want to play precons, there's people who want to do something in between. So here's the idea, and I think they're probably just getting this straight from the Rules Committee. This is probably what the Rules Committee was working on, and what people like Olivia were trying to say, hey, let's hold off on these bans till we figure this out better. 4 power brackets. Every Commander deck goes into one of the brackets by examining the cards and combinations in your deck. I think a lot of the commentary has missed. Combinations are going to be focused on. Comparing them to the list, we need the community to help create. Duh. It's a hard task grading every single card, if that's what is being proposed. You can imagine bracket 1 is the baseline of an average pre-constructed deck or below. First of all, this is where this proposal already goes wrong for me. I would love to have 1, maybe even 2 levels below precon. I like my janky decks. I have a deck that's just like sea monsters. All right, and I get to play all the old like blue cards from my youth that are janky sea monsters. And that cannot compete even against precons, and precons actually can vary quite wildly in power. But so it's okay. That's their tier 1. So maybe there's a tier 0 that's unofficial, but it's below precon. You could still make this work. For lower tiers, we may lean on a mixture of cards and a description of how the deck functions. Higher tiers are likely defined by a more explicit list of cards. So this is where, if you're running anything on not a ban list, but like almost like the restricted list, like list of power cards, that's gonna get your deck up in the higher tier. For example, you can imagine a bracket 1 that has cards that can easily go in any deck, like Swords to Plowshares, Grave Titan, and Grave Titan, okay. Cultivate, sure. Vampiric Tutor. I mean, Cultivate is in a lot of precons, first of all, so interesting. Comparing that to Vampiric Tutor, which is a like CEDH card and kind of expensive. Armageddon, that's a salty card, not necessarily a strong card. I mean, yeah. And then Grim Monolith, again, reserve list, expensive card. They're not going to reprint that anytime soon, theoretically. Cards that make games too much more consistent, lopsided, or fast than the average deck can engage with. This is a problem with Commander 2. Just as they print more cards, every once in a while, a powerful card breaks in and just becomes an auto-include, essentially, if you're in that color. Tutors in general, I think, we'll talk about this later, but if you're trying to keep your playgroup casual, like what my playgroup has done, and we've done no tutors, no fast mana, like no mana positive rocks, essentially. And what that means is it's less building around combos, because your combos become way less consistent without a bunch of tutors. And the games become more varied because you're not tutoring up the same cards over and over again. It becomes more like, the original Commander, where you got 99 card singleton. In this system, your deck would be defined by its highest bracket cards or card or cards. This makes it clear what cards can go where and what kind of cards you can expect people playing. For example, if Ancient Tomb is a bracket 4 card, so that's the top, your deck would be considered a 4, so just one card. But it's part of a tomb-themed deck. Your conversation might be, my deck's a 4 with Ancient Tomb, but a 2 without it. Is that okay, everyone, if I played the Ancient Tomb? Ancient Tomb, in case you don't know, tap, add 2 mana, deals 2 damage to you. Not too much different from Mana Crypt that was banned in terms of how it can accelerate. Will the system guarantee perfectly matched games? No, that might be fine, but if it gets the conversation started from a shared understanding, that's already great for the table. We'd love to hear what you all think about this and which power brackets you would place certain cards in. We will be evaluating the current banned card list. That means re-evaluating the current banned card list alongside both the Commander Rules Committee and the community. We will not ban additional cards as part of this evaluation. Okay, so talking about possibly unbanning. And while discussion of the ban list started this, immediate changes to the list are not our priority. But what they're saying is, and this is the thing, it feels like the bad guys won, right? That the Rules Committee has been forced to give up, and at least for the immediate short term, they're not going to reverse the ban on Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, and to a lesser extent Dockside, and I don't think anybody really cares about Nadu. But they might. That's kind of what this is saying, if I read between the lines. For now, the safety and well-being of the Rules Committee is the priority. What has happened this past week is entirely unacceptable. By working together as a team, we can shoulder the responsibility of this format and everything that comes along with it. Please stay tuned. Okay. Here's Jim LePage's statement. Member of the Rules Committee. Sheldon Menery reached out to me in 2019 because I was yelling into the void on Twitter. He told me it was obvious how passionate I am about Commander, and over the course of the following year, we talked almost exclusively about his legacy, and I think he knew he was dying of cancer for quite a while. Sheldon did. Over the course of the following year, we talked almost exclusively about his legacy and the long-term health of the format. I joined the Commander Advisory Group, that's the CAG, okay, that's the subgroup that advises the RC, and the Rules Committee in 2022. Since 2022, I've been doing a lot of work on procedures, documentation, and planning to that end. The commitment I made to Sheldon before he passed was that Commander would be a thriving game long after every single member of the current committee has passed. I haven't been able to keep up with responding to all the emails, DMs, and tags, but I promise you I've read every single one, including the ones wishing me harm and the ones calling me an idiot. I hear a lot of pain, confusion, uncertainty, and outrage. Oh, should have brought some water. I realized I was going to be reading so much. What's become clear to me is that fulfilling my commitments requires a level of global connectedness, proactive and reactive communication, research, and skill beyond what I'm capable of providing. I don't think it's possible for a group of part-time volunteers to rise to this task. Beyond that, my inability to protect myself and the people I care about casts the whole situation in a different light. This part needs to be dealt with immediately, and I need to acknowledge I am not the right person to deliver on those commitments. The best chance I have of honoring Sheldon's legacy is to hand the keys over to people who are more capable and better resourced. Wizards. Last week, I reached out to Wizards of the Coast for help, and we collectively began working on transitioning all management responsibilities of the format. I'll be providing them with my roadmap, contacts, and documentation to ensure the transition is smooth. It's extremely important to me that the format's new leadership remains faithful to Sheldon's vision of a vibrant global community with a strong focus on the people who play it. Look, who's the alternative? The Rules Committee feels like they're under threat. The juice is not worth the squeeze. They want to keep the format going. There's really only one option. They have to hand it over to Wizards. It does feel like the bad guys won in this. because they're handing it over, and that sucks. That really sucks. I want to express my sincere gratitude and apologies to the community, and especially to the Commander Advisory Group and our Discord moderators who've had a hellish week through no fault of their own. Like, CAG got blamed, got a ton of blame. You saw Josh Lee Kwai, who's the Command Zone guy, who's a big face of Magic, and Commander especially, resigned from the CAG. He, like, you could read between the lines, but he probably felt like they didn't listen to the CAG and take their advice, and they went through with this ban, trying to keep it under wraps. And as I said in my previous video, they thought they were doing something that was community positive. They really thought, like, we don't want people front running this decision. Apparently they were talking to Wizards about it. Some people maybe knew as early as a year ago at Wizards of the Coast. But anyways, they didn't consult the CAG, which is the group that they're supposed to consult about these big decisions. I mean, they consulted them about fast mana, but they didn't consult them about these specific cards. And the way they did a big reveal, trying to keep it under wraps, had a big impact. And we talked about that in the previous video. We'll get into that right now. But I'm truly devastated. This is not the outcome I wanted, but is the only option that provides both appropriate care and attention to the community and the safety that the format's leaders deserve as human beings. Yeah. So what's the alternative? They could hand it over to Wizards, or there's people on the CAG who are like, I want to step up. I want to get into the Death Threat Central and do a lot of volunteer work for do a thankless job because I love the format of Commander so much. Like, these rules committee people were already the people handpicked by Sheldon to carry this on, and they can't. And so I don't see that there's a good option other than handing it over to Wizards. Let's see what Olivia Gobert Hicks says. She says, I'm devastated. I didn't want this. I'll write something more meaningful and thought out soon. Right now, I'm just so sad, empty, hoping I didn't fail the memory of my friend, meaning Sheldon. Please be kind to one another and take care of yourselves. And then she actually has a Magic the Gathering players are cool, actually, and there's a fundraiser and stuff. So don't let this group define the community, first of all. That's much I'm going to say. Here's Shivam, I think, who is not on the rules committee, but was on the CAG. Just says, my heart is broken. I was on a one-on-one call with a rep of the RC last night for 2 hours. By the end, I was weeping like a family member had died. In a way, it has. I gave the last 5 years of my life to Commander, and I promised Sheldon I would keep its spirit alive. I feel like I failed. I failed the format. I failed the community. I failed myself. But then I remembered that 2 weeks ago, before any of this, I'd been ready to retire. I have accomplished so much in Commander. I've kept casual social play at the forefront of the discussion. I've helped folks find new ways to enjoy the game we love so much. And, I didn't fail at all. I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. This is, in terms of perspective, this goes back to what I said. This was a fan-created format that just grew from a couple of people to be the biggest format in Magic, which is a huge card game, which has survived for 30 years and has gone through a lot. I was plucked from a tiny podcast, given a global platform, and I made sure to honor the responsibility I'd been given and to make sure the kitchen table had a voice, and I did that. I will have it said, I never left the CAG. I fought to the best of my ability, but this decision, like so many, was not mine to make, so it goes. Elder Dragon Highlander might fade into the sunset, but as long as I have a voice, Commander will continue. Objectively, this is the right decision. People were genuinely shaken and threats weren't jokes, but subjectively, it effing sucks so effing much. I hate this, but I would rather see Magic end entirely than see any of my friends come to harm, and it's not close. Le roi est mort, vive le roi. The king is dead, long live the king. So casting this as a changeover in royalty. And there was always this tension in Commander between Wizards and the rules committee and the fans that were doing the format. And obviously Wizards has in some ways hijacked Commander. Part of the fun of Commander was that it was doing something with the game was not necessarily designed to do. But once they started designing specifically for Commander, you get a lot of problems. So, what do I think is going to happen here? I think that this 4-tier system, they're going to go forward with it. It might take a long time. It might never quite come together. For right now, Commander will stumble along just fine. There's still Rule 0. There's the deck you had yesterday. You can still play today. You know, if your playgroup was having a good time playing the decks they were playing, they can keep doing that. And that's not been harmed by any of this. It's the real trouble is what happens when you go to a Magic convention or you show up at your local game store and you sit down with strangers. And how are you going to have that conversation? How are you going to and I've played Commander with strangers before and I've had a great time. Honestly, it's been great. During the pandemic, I played over webcam with people, and I met some fun people who had cool cards and decks. So here's something I've been working on for a long time. It's what I call my EDH Alphabet, and this is because this has been on my mind of like, Commander is so big, and so many people have different ideas about what version of Commander, what flavor of Commander they like to play. And we have a CEDH, but why not have other ones? So before all this went down, this is kind of what I was thinking. Like, you have an advised version, which is, the rules committee ban list, and an expectation of tuned but not competitive decks. Because listen, if everybody's deck is perfectly balanced against everybody else's deck, everybody's going to win 25% of the time, which means everybody's going to lose 75% of the time. You got to be playing Commander for more than just the feeling of winning. Even competitive, even CEDH, you need to be playing Commander to get something else out of it. Is the camaraderie with your just an excuse to sit down with your friends or play some annoying cards. Like, I've always advised with Commander, define your deck's win con not by winning the literal game, but like, if you can get your deck to pop off that game, you could call that a win. If you can use your deck to make sure everybody at the table's deck pops off and they all had a great time, call that a win. There's ways to redefine it, like a literal competitive win, and do something else in Commander. If you get to make funny dinosaur sounds as you play your dinosaurs, like, if that is your goal going into the night, you're going to win every time you play your dinosaur deck, versus trying to win and there are pub stompers, and I can't help but think some of these pub stompers were some of these loud, annoying voices that got the rules committee to step aside. And there's a place for the pub stompers, and that's a competitive, tuned table. And so if you feel like you have that urge, like, I don't know, for example, there's somebody in my play group who really enjoys optimizing the decks. Like, his mana bases are always so precise with the amount of different colors that he has, and he's got tap lands and lands that come in untapped because of this and that. Like, he's really put a lot of thought and even math into designing this thing. And like, as an opponent, I really appreciate that. It also makes him a really strong competitor. And so that causes me to adjust how I'm building the decks that I'm going to play against him. But I don't take that personally. Like, I want to, like, I know people hate pub stomping, but in one sense, maybe if you can have some empathy with the person who's coming in and feels like they need to demonstrate their superiority, like, let them win and then say, thanks, we're going to play some lower powered stuff. See you later. And switch it up at the LGS or something. But you could also just say, okay, like, there's somebody who likes to play like this. Is there a way I can find the way I like to play that can match that? And then come back that next week and have something, and maybe, you guys can get into it and enjoy. Because competitive EDH is also really fun. The sitting down and knowing nobody's going to hold back and everybody's going to play to their best ability. And I know some people are really allergic to competitive type of Magic, and I respect that. But I would say, give that a try. Once you've made that social contract, it's going to improve your game. It's going to improve your casual games. Just knowing threat assessment, like, okay, well, I don't want to spend all my removal right now. I'll wait. I'll see if I can get other people at the table to use some removal. And lo and behold, now I'm in a better position going into the end game here. And when we're all using removal a little bit better and more thoughtfully, and now nobody feels specifically targeted because it's them. They'd feel like, okay, I know my friend bases his targeting on threat assessment, so he thought I was a threat and stuff like that. I think you could make a fun format be EDH, banless. No ban list. Black Lotus is legal. CEDH obviously is competitive. That letter of the alphabet's pretty reserved. D, I had a lot of ideas for what letter D could be. No deck size maximum. You could do doubleton instead of singleton, EDH, or you have a 200 card deck. Dual library. You could do one library containing only land and one only spells, and then whenever you have a draw, you get to choose what to draw from, and whenever you have a mill, you get to choose what to mill. EEDH, only Elder Dragons can be commanders. This one is kind of how EDH started. The ED is Elder Dragon Highlander, and Highlander means singleton, essentially, one of. And could be Elder. I'm gonna put this in parentheses. There's some other cards that are Elder but not dragons. But if you restrict the pool of commanders, and then you would have, I don't know how many, but do a Scryfall search. Names contain commander. Names contain Elder, type Elder. How many is it? 44 cards. So now your pool, how would you build, how would you be competitive within that format? That's going to restrict you quite a bit. I don't know. I just think that would be an interesting format. I've played this star format where it's a 5-player and you only attack the 2 players across from you. So your goal is to eliminate the 2 players across from you, and that's how you win. So it's interesting because then people start playing to help other people just so one person doesn't win who was on their team. It creates some interesting dynamics. It does get very complex. I mean, a 4-player game is already super complex. A 5-player game gets even that much more complex. But I recommend you try it. You can do that in just regular decks. FEDH, no fast mana. All cards that tap for create more mana than their mana value. If you state a rule like that, you don't have to make a big man list. It's just like, oh, Dockside makes more, treasures than it costs in almost every situation. Okay, that's not allowed. Soul Ring, not allowed. What about 2-mana rock that taps for 1? That's allowed. So I think with fast mana, especially, that's going to be the best way to do it. You could either do a mana value cutoff, like any fast mana, 2 mana value or under, not allowed. Start at 3, or any rocks or ramp, start them at 3. But I think it might be interesting to just try a format that's like, hey, no fast mana, no tutors. Foil EDH, you can only use foils, which is a collecting challenge. I'm sure Wizards would love that to be competitive foil EDH. Only blingy decks, only the most expensive cards. But you might have fun, like now foils sometimes are cheaper than the regular versions. You might have fun seeing what you can build on a budget with that. GEDH. You have essentially what are commanders, but they're called generals. So all cards that specifically refer to commanders are useless in GEDH. Because this goes to where I think a lot of things started going wrong with Wizards designing specifically for Commander and stuff like Arcane Signets. Like, okay, goes in every deck. That just makes the format homogenous, and in some sense, it's good to have some homogeneousness because it's hard. It's a hard enough format to pick up. But HEDH, no monocolor hosers, Boil, Life Force. you know, these are ones that people don't necessarily think about because they don't really print this stuff anymore. But some of these old cards, you could really just host one deck at the table, which is a big feel bad. HEDH, Hidden Commander. You don't reveal the commander until you cast it. So this might be a fun wrinkle just to throw into a game. EDH, no infinite combos. I think infinite combos is a great, because Wizards mentioning cards that combo being a delineator between these levels is smart, I think, because infinite combo loops cause a lot of problems with people who just want to play casually. So I played in play groups that's like no infinite combos. It does just, the games are more interesting for me personally without the infinite combos. I love to see somebody pull off a cool infinite combo in other things, but like when you all sit down and rule 0, go no infinite combo loops, that also can create a really nice kind of environment to like bring out different cards, get more turns to explore things. Nobody's winning out of nowhere. But you know, they can be abused, right? The elf decks, elf, mana dork, crater hoof, I win. Well, that gets kind of boring. That's, you know, almost like a high powered deck, but it could, those are the kind of things like, how are they going to do this where people don't just, if they want to pub stomp, they don't just switch to elves and pub stomp in tier 1 or 2 with a bunch of commons and uncommons that synergize really well. JEDH, jank decks only. So this would be like tier 0 in this new proposed format. Bad tribes, weird themes, overly elaborate win conditions only. And then you could even do something where you really try to incentivize people to play jank. Like the winner is determined by a vote of the pod of who did the jankiest thing, so that actually winning on life total in the game is not the way you win. JEDH, here's another possible JEDH. All players start with a Jeweled Lotus in their command zone. Well, I think Jeweled Lotus is going back up in price. I hope you all listen to me not to sell your Jeweled Lotuses, your Jeweled Loti. This would be a great use. If they do go to $1 each, this would be a great use. Just, you don't even have to make proxies. Just buy the $1 Jeweled Lotuses, hand them out at the beginning of the night. Everybody gets the acceleration. And when everybody's super, no one is, as I think they said in The Incredibles. KEDH, no alternate win condition. So some of the early stuff is like Coalition Victory, Biorhythm. It is banned. Commander. It's not is banned. Banned Commander. So Biorhythm, each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls. 8 mana sorcery. Like this is there's stuff that's hanging out on the banned list. Coalition Victory. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. In a competitive environment, these wouldn't be competitive, and so you wouldn't necessarily have to restrict them. Like you could allow them in the tier 1 or 4. I keep thinking tier 1 should be the higher level. That's another problem with this thing. But you know, people are saying Fast Bond might come back. Flash, people don't like in CDH. That just homogenized the format. But like in lower power formats, Flash should be just fine. So it's kind of tricky about how they do these. I would love for Hullbreacher to come back because I bought a couple of these because I was like, oh, this card's busted in Commander. I'm going to get one of these for my Pirate deck and, you know, one for my Draw Cards deck. And lo and behold, it got banned out from under me. That's kind of what I mean, like the alternate win condition type cards. EDH, no mass land destruction. So if you look, there's a thing called salt scores in Commander. If you don't know about it, you can look it up. I think EDH Rec has a ranking that they do every year where they have the whole community rank based on how salty it makes you when an opponent plays cards. Mass land destruction is usually pretty high up there. You could do MEDH, which could be misprints only, or maybe I'll create my own ban list if people want to play the style that is my favorite style of Commander. But I'm going to show up with decks that have a lot of different. I have too many Commander decks. Probably I'm not able to manage keeping them updated. I'm sure next time I go to play Commander, I'm going to show up and they're going to be like, "Ah, that card's banned." That's happened to me many times because part of my critique of the ban list is like, there's too many cards on this. Look, they're not even fitting all on one Scryfall page. Is there a way to display more? Sure there is, but there's 90 cards. But like the conspiracies, you can just say anything that says conspiracy. So that can like fit in your brain a little easier. But like, and anything that says anti, like contract from below, dark pat, demonic attorney, you can fit those. But then like, are you gonna remember that Arayo Soratami Ascendant is on the thing, or Gifts Ungiven, or like, Iona's Shield of Emeria? Like some of these cards, you might just go, "Oh, that's a cool card. I haven't seen that in the Commander table. Play it," and then people will be like, "Oh, that's banned," and you feel like a jerk. But it's sort of like, well, I didn't memorize the whole 90 card ban list, and if it gets longer, so NEDH, I would love to see an NEDH non-legendary creatures. You can make your Uncle Istvan Commander deck. You can make your Nephilim Commander decks. That's explicitly allowed in NEDH. And part of my thinking was like, you sit down and it's like, "Hey, what are we playing tonight?" Or you email ahead with your friends, and it's like, okay, it's yeah, it's N Q or whatever. So non-legendaries are allowed, no infinite combos, and Q EDH, no cards that pose questions to an opponent, like Gifts Ungiven, which is banned, or Turgid. OEDH, old border only. Strictly, it has to be the printing. I mean, you could allow it with proxies, but then again, that would like restrict the card pool quite enormously if you had only old border stuff. PEDH, you could say proxies expected, which is another great way to level the playing field. And obviously, Wizards is not going to try to encourage formats that allow proxies. I mean, Wizards would like to see probably a competitive EDH scene develop, like that's fully supported by Wizards, because that means people have to play with the actual cards. Because I think a lot of CEDH tournaments and things are proxy friendly, because from the CEDH content I've watched, people there show up and they want you to have the best deck. They want to play the whole idea is to play at the highest level. Pauper EDH is already a pretty strong format. I definitely recommend you try it. I have a group that plays it. I built Pauper EDH deck. I've enjoyed playing it. I would like to see more people doing Pauper EDH. Essentially, you can have an uncommon creature, so it's kind of like non-legendary EDH that you can build around, and then everything else is commons in the deck. Precons only. It sounds like that's kind of going to be a tier 1. Or like precons only, but ignore bans, because now there's a precon that has Dockside in it, and it's not that strong of a deck really, even with Dockside in it. QEDH, no cards that pose questions to opponent. We talked about that. Reserve list banned. So I would, in general, it's a feel bad when somebody is just like slamming down wallet cards. I own some of these old reserve list cards because I've been in the game a long time. But still, even I'm like, when somebody plays Chains of Mephistopheles or something. Random commander. Everyone brings as many commander decks as they wish, minimum 2. You number the decks, you roll die, use a random number generator, pick one for each player. That's gonna, if some people don't like other people touching their cards, so those people are not gonna like this, but if you're a pub stomper, SEDH, you just, no scarce cards, any cards that are $40 or more, no stacks you could do. For S, no staples, no searching library. Searching library really slows things down. I would love to see a common version of EDH that's just like, you know what, Get rid of the fetch lands. Get rid of tutors. It would seriously hurt green because you won't be able to search up lands as easily. But there's other ways to ramp. Tiny TEDH, tiny leaders, theme deck, no non-land tutors. Tournament EDH is another thing that people already use TEDH to mean, which to me is like sort of like CEDH, but maybe is less proxy friendly. I'm not sure. Don't know enough about that. I just thought of this idea: timed EDH. You have 2 chess clocks, one for the person whose turn it is, and then one for the people that get a certain amount of time for responses, say like 30 seconds a minute. Anytime you pass priority, and then they, pass priority back to you. You've got like 5 minutes or whatever for a turn. That's going to shut down these decks that just kind of play solitaire. UEDH, universes, anything universal beyond is banned. Unadulterated. I'm not sure what I was thinking with that idea. Upgradable commander. So you can have an unlimited number of commanders of ascending mana value, but you can only cast one with a higher mana value after the previous one has been cast. So it's sort of like when a commander gets eliminated, you bring in another. But that could help see, because right now, higher mana value commanders don't see that much play. And with Jeweled Lotus banned, they're going to see even less play. But if you did this kind of format where you have to come up with like stacks of commanders, not stacks, but you know what I'm talking about, a whole ascending list of commanders, that might actually get some of those cards played and get seen on the battlefield. It might be cool. VEDH, Vitality EDH, no bans, but powerful cards mean starting with a lower life total. So you could say, okay, you want to play with Mana Crypt? You start with 10 fewer life, and it deals 3 damage. Now all of a sudden, maybe that trade-off is not worth it. And you could have a cool like panel that's setting those things. Just saying, look, our philosophy is not to ban anything, but if you want to play with something super powerful, we're going to make it a high life total. And if people are winning a lot with that, we're going to up that life total until the point where it becomes a real hard decision. WEDH, wishboard of 15 cards allowed. This is a change that Wizards could easily make. There's a lot of cards that wish and get you a card from outside the game. And if you were able to show up with a wishboard of cards, and I'm sure Wizards would love to sell 15 more cards to every Commander player. They would love it. Just like they have sideboard cards. And that's part of the game. And it's a great place for where sideboard cards could go. If you do like tutors, the wishboard is a really like even less of a cost of tutors. So that's really like going full tutor ability. And I mean, there are things like Karn that can only get an artifact, but still, that's like huge. When you're talking about the entire card pool of 30 years of Magic cards, that's a huge amount. WEDH, white border cards only. So you literally have to have a white border. And then, because they printed the 2-mana Tibalt in white border, finally, maybe that card will have a home. XEDH, 0x EDH, it's okay to proxy any card owned by a person in the playgroup. Or you could do XEDH means no extra turns. Extra turns are another thing that I think should really get scrutiny if you're doing a wider kind of ban menu of like, you know what, I don't like games with tutors, extra turns, or fast mana. Okay. Knock all those out. Now you can have a game that's much more like a traditional EDH game in a lot of ways. Why EDH? No paying for life effects such as Yawgmoth. This is just historically a kind of busted thing in Commander because you're starting with so much extra life. So life loss effects. This might be something you could experiment with doing a format without this. And ZEDH, no free spells. Zakama unwelcome. That's what the Z stands for. So that's this EDH alphabet thing I've been working on, and maybe I'll make videos kind of fleshing out each of these things. Let me know in the comments what you think of that. Wow. Okay, I've talked a long time. Well, thank you for joining my podcast. I'm gonna try to get this posted as fast as I can. Thanks for coming, and remember, Magic is a game so fun, even dads can enjoy it. Adios.